My name is Emily Parker. I'm 34 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of how my family forced me to give up my son to my sister and what happened when I finally found the proof. I was 19 years old when I found out I was pregnant. I was scared. I was alone. I didn't know what to do. I was a child myself, still trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted from life. I was in college. I was working. I was trying to build a future. I wasn't ready to be a mother, but when I found out I was pregnant, something changed inside me. I felt a connection. I felt the love. I felt a bond. I wanted to keep the baby. I wanted to love him. I wanted to raise him. I wanted to be his mother. I went to my parents. I said, "Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant. I want to keep the baby. I want to be a mother." My mother started to cry. She said, "Emily, how could you do this? How could you ruin your life like this? How could you be so careless? How could you be so selfish?" My father said, "Emily, you're too young. You have no money. You have no future. You can't keep this baby. You'll ruin your life. You'll ruin everything." I said, "Mom, Dad, I know it's going to be hard, but I can do it. I can make it work. I want to try. I want to be a good mother." My mother said, "Emily, you're being selfish. You're not thinking about the baby. You're not thinking about anyone but yourself. You're not thinking about what's best for him." My father said, "Emily, what kind of life are you going to give this child? You have nothing. You can barely take care of yourself. You can't take care of a baby. You have no money. You have no home. You have nothing." They were relentless. They were cruel. They made me feel like I was a bad person for wanting to keep my own child. They made me feel like I was a failure. They made me feel like I was worthless. They made me feel like I didn't matter. They made me feel like I was nothing. I cried myself to sleep every night for a week. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think about anything else. I was consumed by the pain. I was consumed by the guilt. I was consumed by everything. I was consumed by the fear. My mother came into my room one night. She sat on my bed. She said, "Emily, I know this is hard. I know you love the baby, but you have to think about what's best for him. You have to think about what's best for everyone." I said, "Mom, I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I'm confused. I need your help. I don't want to make the wrong decision." She said, "Your sister wants a baby. She and her husband are trying. They can't have children. Let them adopt the baby. Let them raise him. He'll have a good life. He'll have everything. He'll have a family." My father said, "Emily, your sister can give him everything you can't. She has money. She has a house. She has a husband. She has a future. He'll be safe with her. He'll be loved with her. He'll be happy with her." I felt like I was being crushed. I felt like I was being suffocated. I felt like I had no way out. I felt like I was drowning. My sister's name was Jessica. She was 5 years older than me. She was married. She had a good job. She had a good life. She had everything. She was beautiful. She was successful. She was everything I wasn't. She couldn't have children. She had been trying for years. She was devastated. She was heartbroken. She was desperate. She came to me. She said, "Emily, I know this is hard. I know this is difficult. But I want to adopt your baby. I want to raise him. I want to give him a good life. I want to love him like my own." I said, "Jessica, I don't know if I can do that. He's my son. He's part of me. He's my blood. He's my future." She said, "Emily, I understand. But you're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. You can have more children one day." "I can't. This is my only chance. This is my only hope." She was crying. She was desperate. She was everything I couldn't say no to. She was my sister. I loved her. I wanted to help her. I wanted to make her happy. My mother said, "Emily, this is the right thing to do. This is what's best for everyone. You'll understand one day. You'll thank us one day." My father said, "Emily, think about what's best for the baby. Think about what's best for everyone. Think about what's best for the family. I was surrounded. I was pressured. I was guilt. I was manipulated. I felt like I had no choice. I felt like I was being forced into a corner. I felt like I was losing everything. I felt like I was losing my mind. I cried for hours. I cried for days. I cried until I had no tears left. I cried until I was numb. I cried until I couldn't feel anything anymore. I cried until I was empty. I signed the papers. I gave up my son. I gave him to my sister. I gave him away. I gave up everything. I gave my son up. I gave him to my sister. I signed the papers. I gave up all my rights. I was 19 years old. I was broken. I was empty. I was lost. I was 19 years old, and I had just given away the most precious thing in my life. I had given away my future. I had given away my happiness. I had given away everything. I held my son for the last time. He was so small. He was so beautiful. He was so precious. He had my eyes. He had my nose. He was mine. He was perfect. He was everything. I said, I love you. I'll always love you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you. I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough. I kissed his forehead. I held him close. I breathed him in. I memorized his face. I memorized his smell. I memorized everything. I handed him to my sister. She took him. She smiled. She said, "Thank you, Emily. I'll take good care of him. I'll give him everything. I'll love him like my own." My mother hugged me. She said, "Emily, you did the right thing. You're a good person. You're a good sister. You're a good daughter. I'm proud of you." My father hugged me. He said, "Emily, we're proud of you. You made a difficult choice. You made the right choice. You'll understand one day." I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel anything. I was empty. I was hollow. I was nothing. I was a shell of a person. I was broken. Jessica named him Matthew. He was my son. But he was hers now. He was her son. He was her everything. He was no longer mine. I didn't see my son again for 15 years. For 15 years, I grieved. I grieved for my son. I grieved for my loss. I grieved for everything. I grieved for the life I could have had. I grieved for the life I should have had. I grieved for everything. I watched my sister raise my son. I watched her get everything I never had. I watched her become the mother I wanted to be. I watched her be everything I couldn't be. Matthew was beautiful. He was smart. He was everything. He had my eyes. He had my smile. He had my everything. He was the most beautiful child I had ever seen. He was the most precious thing in my life. And he was gone. He was gone forever. I saw him sometimes. At family gatherings. At holidays. At birthdays. Every time I saw him, my heart broke. Every time I heard him laugh, I cried. Every time I saw him smile, I died a little inside. Every time I heard him call Jessica Mommy, I felt like I was being stabbed. I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to tell him I was his mother. I wanted to tell him I loved him. I wanted to tell him I never wanted to give him up. I wanted to tell him everything. But I didn't. I couldn't. My mother said, "Emily, you can't tell him. It would ruin everything. It would destroy the family. It would destroy Jessica. It would destroy everyone. It would destroy Matthew. You have to keep the secret. You have to protect everyone." So I stayed silent. I stayed silent for 15 years. I stayed silent while my son grew up. I stayed silent while my sister raised him. I stayed silent while the truth ate me alive. I watched him grow up from a distance. I watched him take his first steps. I watched him say his first words. I watched him start school. I watched him graduate. I watched him become a person. I watched him become everything I ever dreamed he would be. But I couldn't be part of it. I was just a spectator. I was just a stranger. I was just a ghost. Every birthday was torture. Every holiday was torture. Every family gathering was torture. I smiled. I pretended to be happy. I pretended like everything was fine. But inside, I was dying. I was dying every single day. I was dying a slow death. When Matthew was 15 years old, I started to suspect something. I started to suspect that my parents had manipulated me. I started to suspect that they had never wanted me to keep the baby. I started to suspect that everything was a lie. I noticed things. I noticed that my mother was always pushing me to give up the baby. I noticed that my father was always supporting Jessica. I noticed that Jessica was always getting everything she wanted. I noticed that my parents never talked about the adoption. I noticed that they always changed the subject when I brought it up. I noticed that they were hiding something. I started to ask questions. I said, "Mom, why did you make me give up the baby? Why didn't you let me keep him?" My mother said, "Emily, we were trying to help you. We were trying to protect you. We were doing what was best for everyone." I said, "Mom, it wasn't best for me. It wasn't best for Matthew. It was best for Jessica. It was best for you. It was never about me. It was never about what I wanted." My mother said, "Emily, you're being dramatic. You're always so dramatic. It was the right thing to do. You'll understand one day." I said, "Mom, I want to know the truth. I want to know what really happened. I want to know why you made me give up my son. I want to know everything." My mother said, "Emily, I don't want to talk about this. It's in the past. It's over. Let it go. Move on with your life." But I couldn't let it go. I had to know the truth. I had to know what really happened. I had to know why my family had done this to me. I had to know why they took my son away. I started to investigate. I started to look for proof. I started to look for evidence. I started to look for answers. I went to the adoption agency. I went to the courthouse. I went to the hospital. I went everywhere. I looked everywhere. I asked everyone. I found nothing. There were no records. There were no documents. There was nothing. It was like my son had disappeared. It was like he never existed. It was like I had imagined everything. But I didn't give up. I kept going. I kept searching. I kept believing. I kept hoping. I kept fighting. I talked to people. I talked to relatives. I talked to friends. I talked to anyone who might know something. I talked to anyone who might have seen something. I talked to anyone who might have heard something. One day, I talked to my aunt. She said, "Emily, I always thought something was wrong with the adoption. Your parents were too eager to get rid of the baby. It didn't seem right. It seemed too convenient. It seemed too planned." I said, "Aunt, what do you mean? What did you see? What did you hear? What do you know?" She said, "I saw your parents pressure you. I saw them manipulate you. I saw them make you feel like you had no choice. I saw them do everything they could to get rid of that baby. I saw them destroy your life." I was shocked. I was hurt. I was angry. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe my own family would do this to me. I was 34 years old when I met Mrs. Henderson. She was a social worker who had been involved in the adoption. She was 70 years old. She was retired. She had been a social worker for 40 years. She had seen everything. She had heard everything. She knew everything. She said, "Emily, I know you. I remember you. I remember your family. I remember everything. I remember the day you gave up your son. I remember the tears. I remember the pain. I remember everything." I said, "Mrs. Henderson, I need to ask you something. Did my parents manipulate me? Did they pressure me to give up my son?" She said, "Emily, I've been waiting for you to ask that question. I've been waiting for 15 years. I've been waiting for you to come and find the truth." She reached into her drawer. She pulled out a file. It was thick. It was full of papers. It was full of everything. It was full of the truth. She said, "Emily, I have a file on your parents. I have a file on everything they did. I've been keeping it for 15 years. I wanted someone to know the truth. I wanted you to know the truth." I opened the file. I started reading. I couldn't stop. The file was thick. It was full of papers. It was full of everything. It was full of the truth. September 12th, 2005. Meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Parker. They want their daughter, Emily, to give up her baby. They want their other daughter, Jessica, to adopt the baby. They say Emily is too young to be a mother. They say she has no future. They say she would ruin the baby's life. They are very insistent. They are very manipulative. October 5th, 2005. Meeting with Emily. She seems uncertain. She says she wants to keep the baby, but she says her parents are pressuring her. She says they won't support her if she keeps the baby. She says she feels trapped. She says she feels like she has no choice. October 15th, 2005. Meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Parker. I discussed the adoption with them. I asked them if they were pressuring their daughter. They denied it. They said they were just trying to help. They said they were doing what was best for everyone. They were very convincing. They were very manipulative. October 20th, 2005. Meeting with Emily. She signed the adoption papers. She was crying. She said she didn't want to do this. She said she felt like she had no choice. She said her parents would never forgive her if she kept the baby. She said she was losing everything. October 21st, 2005. The adoption was finalized. Emily's baby was adopted by Jessica and her husband. Emily was not present. She was too upset. She couldn't bear to be there. She was broken. She was destroyed. I documented everything. I documented everything they did. I wanted someone to know the truth. I wanted Emily to know the truth. I wanted her to know what her parents did. I read the entire file. I cried. I couldn't stop crying. I realized everything. My parents had manipulated me. They had pressured me. They had lied to me. They had made me give up my son. They had taken everything from me. They had destroyed my life. They had taken my future. They had taken my happiness. I called Mrs. Henderson. I said, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me what was happening? Why did you let me suffer all these years?" She said, "I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't think you were ready. I was afraid. I was afraid of your parents. I was afraid of what they would do.
I'm sorry."
I'm so sorry. I said, "Mrs. Henderson, thank you. Thank you for keeping the file. Thank you for telling me the truth. Thank you for giving me my life back." She said, "Emily, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for the pain you suffered." I said, "It's okay. I understand. You were trying to protect me. I know that now. I forgive you." I went to my parents' house. I had the file in my hand. I had the proof. I had everything. I had the truth. My mother was in the kitchen. She was cooking dinner. She didn't look up when I walked in. She said, "Emily, what are you doing here? You didn't call." I said, "Mom, we need to talk." I placed the file on the counter. I said, "Mom, do you know what this is?"
She looked at it.
She said, "What is this?" I said, "This is a file from Mrs. Henderson. It's a file on you. It's a file on everything you did to me. It's a file on all your lies. It's a file on your manipulation." I started reading from the file. I read about the pressure. I read about the manipulation. I read about the lies. I read about everything. I read about the truth. My mother's face turned pale. She said, "Emily, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to help. I was just trying to do what was best for everyone." I said, "Mom, you didn't help me.
You destroyed me.
You took my son. You gave him to Jessica. You made me give up everything. You didn't care about me. You never cared about me." My father came into the room. He said, "Emily, what's going on? What is this?" I said, "Dad, you manipulated me.
You pressured me.
You lied to me. You made me give up my son.
You didn't care about me.
You never cared about me." My father said, "Emily, I didn't know. I didn't know what she was doing. I thought we were doing what was best. I thought we were helping you." I went to my sister's house. She was living in a big house. She had a good job. She had a good life. She had everything. She had my son. She had my life. She had everything. She was surprised to see me. She said, "Emily, what are you doing here? You didn't call." I said, Jessica, we need to talk. I placed the file on the table. I said, Jessica, do you know what this is? She said, what is this? I said, this is a file from Mrs. Henderson. It's a file on Mom and Dad. It's a file on everything they did to me. It's the truth. I started reading from the file. I read about the pressure. I read about the manipulation. I read about the lies. I read about everything. I read about the truth. My sister started to cry. She said, Emily, I didn't know. I didn't know what they did. I thought you wanted to give up the baby. I thought you were doing what was best. I didn't know they manipulated you. I said, Jessica, I didn't want to give up the baby. I was manipulated. I was pressured. I was lied to. I had no choice. They took my son. They gave him to you. They took everything from me. She said, Emily, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I would have never done this if I had known. I would have never taken him. I went to see Matthew. He was 15 years old. He was beautiful. He was smart. He was everything. He had my eyes. He had my smile. He was my son. I said, Matthew, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Something I should have never kept from you. He said, what is it, Emily? I said, I'm your mother. I'm your real mother. I gave you up when you were born. I was forced to. My parents manipulated me. They pressured me. They made me give you up. I never wanted to give you up. I wanted to keep you. I wanted to love you. I wanted to raise you. Matthew started to cry. He said, I knew it. I always knew something was different. I always knew I didn't belong. I always knew Jessica wasn't my real mother. I always knew there was something missing. I said, Matthew, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to give you up. I wanted to keep you. I wanted to love you. I wanted to raise you. I wanted to be your mother. He said, Emily, I forgive you. I forgive you for everything. I know you didn't have a choice. I know you were manipulated. I know you were pressured. I understand. I don't blame you. We hugged. We cried. We started to heal. We started to become mother and son. We started to build a relationship. We started to love each other. Matthew and I started to build a relationship. We started to talk. We started to heal. We started to love each other. We started to become a family. We spent time together. We went on trips. We laughed. We cried. We became mother and son. We became family. I was 34 years old. I had my son back. I had everything I ever wanted. I had my life back. I had my future back. I had my happiness back. If you've ever been forced to give up something precious to you, I want you to hear something. You didn't deserve what happened to you. You didn't deserve to be used. You didn't deserve to be manipulated. You didn't deserve to be taken advantage of. You deserve to have your own life. You deserve to have your own choices. You deserve to have your own happiness. My name is Emily Parker. I'm 34 years old. I was forced to give up my son, and I got him back. If this story made you feel something, drop a comment below. Tell me the word that describes what you feel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for listening to mine.